In British subway platforms, the term mind the gap is used to protect passengers from the hazardous and inconspicuous gap between the platform and the subway cars. It's a small gap, and yet for the hurried traveler, it can create legitimate peril of injury and even death. Well, James 4:17 says that the gap between what you know and what we do isn't just missed opportunity, it's actually a sin issue for us as believers. That's pretty sobering. I used to think about this passage as a ratio. I called it the HD ratio, measuring the degree of gap between what I hear and what I do. That gap is often the gap between a 1x, 10x, or 100x life in Christ. It's the gap of the abundant life that Jesus offers in John 10:10 versus a frustrated spiritual life. Well, a while back, I was talking about this with a guy named Brandon Schaefer. And after seeing my little two-dimensional ratio idea, he grabbed my notebook and expanded out into a more dynamic 2x2 grid, because we all know that 2x2s make everything better. And he called it the hearing-doing matrix. And he said, well, if the vertical axis is hearing, and if the horizontal axis is doing, he began to unpack what these look like. He said, well, if the upper left quadrant is where you're hearing God, you know the Bible, you have strategic plans, you have an MBA, you're all about notebooks on the shelf and lots of learning, you know lots of stuff, but you're not doing anything with it. Well, you get stuck in a cerebral discipleship and a cerebral leadership where it's a head game, but it's not trickling out to your hands and feet. This is called the forgetful life. It's where we live by the do as I say, not as I do mantra. When the lower left quadrant, you give lip service to hearing God, but not really. And frankly, you're not doing much to hear him or attempt to follow him in life or business. So you're just going through the default motions of how you've always done things. And it's actually, God wired us to be dissatisfied when we are seeking satisfaction apart from him. I mean, basically the entire first chapter of the book of Haggai is a great expose on that scenario. And the resulting condition is one of immense frustration. The lower right quadrant is where we're running so hard, busily doing a ton, to the point that we're actually tripping over our own shoelaces. You can be doing so much stuff, serving on a ton of boards, involved in a dozen ministries, launching 5 new products, full throttle for the Lord, that you have no time to hear God, to be with God, to experience the fruit of his Spirit in your life, nor pause long enough to disciple others and get the right things done. This is the fumbling quadrant. And lastly, there's the enviable upper right quadrant. This is where every Christian leader wants to be. You're hearing God, you're doing what he says. You're so clear on the yes that you can say no easily, and you live with an identity-based life with discerning wisdom. Even if everything in life and business is not going up and to the right at the moment, your eyes are on the right prize. You're going about it with the fruit of his Spirit and a healthy cadence. This is the faithful, fruitful zone. Well, I've lived in every one of those quadrants. Sometimes I visit them each within a given day. My prayer is that our loving Father corrects me and you as quickly as possible to get us back on track towards the faithful, fruitful life. Let's be learners, seekers of truth, wisdom, counsel, best practices, but let's also be doers of the truth. Let's embrace any opportunity to mind the gap proactively. So buckle up, seize the day that God has prepared for us.